Hello friends, Tanya here for Spellbinders, and today I am using all of the club kits that I get each month. This is the May 10 cards video. We're going to start out with some ink blending here. I have 3 blue colors here. I did show them on the screen. I did not pay attention. I think it's Prize Ribbon, Mermaid Lagoon maybe, and Tumbled Glass. It is 3 of the beautiful Distress Oxide ink colors. I am ink blending an entire half sheet of cardstock, which measures 5.5 by 8.5 inches. I tend to do that, especially when I'm making a 5 by 7 card, so that I can create my background and then cut out exactly the portions that I want. We're going to move into the Glimmer of the Month kit, the Silhouette Balloon Greetings. This is a really unique design. I haven't seen anyone do this before. You foil your sentiment on your card base, and then I used the confetti rainbow foil that came with the kit this time. And then you're going to die cut around the words, but only partially. I'll pull out those dies here in a second, and you line up the ones around the words. Now there are several different foiling plates and several different sentiments that go along with this. We're also going to cut it out like it's a banner across a balloon, and it's going to create this follow piece that will allow you to layer things behind it, create a shaker card, a whole variety of things. Now I've taped the portions that are specific to the happy birthday sentiment, and now I'm carefully taping the balloon portions so that they meet up with the ends of the sentiment portions. Now there are 3 sentiments in the Glimmer of the Month kit this month. It is happy birthday, it's your day, and make a wish. I'm going to use most of these in the cards today, and here you're going to see how this all plays out. I am carefully removing the dies. I'm using the best ever craft tape from Spellbinders, and it is amazing. I do use it over and over again. You can see that I did not completely line up my ends very well there, but I'm just going to take an X-Acto knife or a craft knife and carefully trim that away. Super easy. One of the embossing folders this month, this is the 3D embossing folder of the month. It is called Balloons and Banners. Now I have since trimmed down my panel to 4.5 by 6.5 or 4 3/4 and 6 3/4. I can't remember which. And then I embossed my panel. Now I have some embellishment mousse. Mine is quite dried out. So I am just adding a little spritz of water and then picking up some of the embellishment mousse with my finger and smearing it over the raised portions of the embossed images from the Balloons and Banners embossing folder. This is the 3D embossing folder, so it really has some deep etching, and I think that turned out just the way I wanted it. Next, I'm going to pull out one of the older Glimmer plates. This is the Glimmer Diagonal Line Glimmer. And I foiled that with some gold foil. And now I have a piece of acetate that I've cut to be just a little larger than the panel that I'm going to put behind our balloon panel. And I cut that to, I believe that's probably cut down to 4.25 by 6.25. And I have used some double-sided tape and sealed 3 of the edges. Next, we're going to take some sequins. This happens to be the Starry Night sequins. They were available through Spellbinders, I think a year or 2 ago in a kit. And they come in quite a large container, and I have gobs of them to use. And they colors coordinated perfectly with the ink blending that I did on this card. There's quite a variety of sequins and gems in that collection, but it really does well in the edge-to-edge shakers because it all will just shake around. The way that this shaker is created, it really allows for room for bigger embellishments. Next, we're getting out a heavyweight white cardstock base, and this is cut to 10 inches by 7 inches, scored at 5 inches, and creased very well. Now that I have the glue all adhered, since I glued the card front to the shaker base, I'm now going to glue the entire thing using liquid glue to our card front. I love to make edge-to-edge shakers. They just are so much easier to me, and they always seem to shake better. So here we have the full shaker, and you can see how all of those bits just shake around and fill our balloon just like a real party. Next, we're going to use the clear stamp and die of the month. And we're going to stamp that on some cardstock. I'm really aiming for just that cupcake, which has a coordinating die. And I'm going to take one of the sentiments from that stamp set and stamp that on another piece of cardstock. I am using the stamp wheel, the Altenew stamp wheel. I do love this. I especially love that it secures my paper in place because it's a photopolymer base. So my cardstock stays exactly where I need it. Now I'm going to use that to my advantage here. I'm going to quickly color this cupcake with some Copic markers, not being particularly picky about them, although I do find that one of the markers I chose was a little bit of a dustier color than I intended. You're going to see how I fix that here in a minute. I'm going to test that marker out on my paper here in a second and discover that, yeah, it truly is darker than I intended. Actually, maybe I didn't. Yep. It's more of a dusty mint color, and I want a more bright aqua color. So I just go over that with a color I like better. That's one of the beautiful things about Copics, and you may wonder if this is going to stain my photopolymer base. It does not. I'll show you that here in a minute. And since all of it stayed in the same place, I was able to stamp over the top of my coloring to make sure that that stayed nice and bright. I used the coordinating dies to die cut those, and as you can see, I tried to stamp the sentiment on the inside of the card with a stamp block, and it did not get a good impression. That's when having coordinating dies it comes in super handy, because then you can stamp it again and then just lay it right over the top of your boo-boo. And that cupcake fits perfectly right in there. Now I'm going to take it's called liquid pixie dust. And it creates a watercolor shimmer over the top. And I just use a paintbrush and a little bit of water to add that to our cupcake. Next, we're going to do another round of blending. We've got a really soft rainbow here, and then I have been in a mixed media mood. I took some Distress ink from Tim Holtz, and I am using that to brayer the this is Distress paint, sorry, not Distress ink, and the saltwater taffy, and I'm using my brayer to apply this to the top portion of our embossing folder. This is the Balloons and Banners 3D embossing folder of the month, and I am going to lay my cardstock on the bottom portion that does not have the ink on it, the paint, and close that. Now it hasn't shifted after it went through the die cut machine. It hasn't shifted in the folder. I'm going to leave it right where it's at. Add some more paint so I can get a bolder color, and we're going to have a lovely effect from that. So the raised portions of this embossing will stay the rainbow coloring. It's kind of like the embossing folder version of Joseph's coat technique. I really like how this turned out. The colors, they're okay, but I had to go with the paint that I had. And I will try that again with a different set of colors. Next, I took I took the banner from the large die of the month kit and some of the sentiments that go in that, and it's going to say sending birthday wishes. There is one die that cuts out the main body of the banner, another die that cuts the two pieces of the tails, and then a third die that cuts something that adds a shadow or a joining for each of the banners. So you can make there be as many loops of this banner that will hold a sentiment piece as you need. I'm using 3 loops of the sentiment banner, and I am using birthday wishes enclosed as my sentiments. I did die cut those with some of the mirror gold cardstock, and I cut the banner tails and the banners in some brushed white cardstock, and I found some white glitter cardstock and used that as the joining piece and part of the shadow of the ribbon tails or banner tails. So now we're going to use those banner joining pieces to adhere our different segments of the sentiment together. And since I'm using glitter paper or glitter cardstock, it does take a little longer to get those pieces to adhere together. Have a little patience. I put a heavyweight block over the top to get my pieces to all join together solidly. I did add some extra cardstock scraps behind our main sentiment portion and adhered that to the front of the card. Next, we're going to take another one of the sentiments from the Glimmer of the Month kit. We're going to use some Starburst foil. I'll have that linked in the description box below if you like that foil and would like to get some for yourself. It does turn out just gorgeous. We'll use the coordinating dies. It says have a colorful day, and this is from the add-on set. We'll die cut around our sentiment with the pieces that are provided. Now this will also pop in to that balloon fallout, just like the other sentiments. However, we're going to use this in another way. I'm still going to use these dies to die cut as much of the sentiment as I can. I'll remove those dies, take my scissor, trim off the extra cardstock, and then come back and just fussy cut those little portions that need to be cut off yet. It goes very quickly, doesn't have to be perfect. Just trimming those out real quick. I thought I needed to tidy that up a little bit. Almost done. I think that looks stunning. And then we're going to glue that to the inside of the card. Just use my Barely Art Precision Glue, which is my favorite glue. Pop that right there. And I think that'll make a fantastic birthday card. For card number 3, I'm still playing with the distress paint, and I used my gel press for this one. And the candles, is it Candles and More? Candles for Every Birthday, I think is what it was. And then I'm pulling out the foundry wax in all of the colors. We're going to take a dot of each of these and squeeze it onto a silicone mat because I'm going to be picking this up with my fingertip and running that over the embossing folder. Could you use something else like a sponge dauber or a brayer to apply these? You sure could. I find it just as easy to use my finger. So I'm going to do a row of the silver and then a row of the gold. And then we have some bronze. I don't think that's what these are called. I don't remember the names, but again, I will have those linked in the description box below. And then we have this copper look. It looks pretty blobby and not all that interesting. But wait, once you apply heat to all of this, it's going to come to life. This is just how I'm cleaning it up. I just have dish soap in my spray bottle. I have a giant spray bottle so I can wash all the things with my spray bottle here, my cleaner. Just going to clean that silicone mat, and you can see that it cleans up very nicely. You don't have to worry about the foundry wax drying out or anything. Just take your heat tool and heat that until it turns shiny, and it can bubble a little bit, especially in areas that you may have put a lot of the foundry wax. I had a lot of fun playing with this. I must love finger painting or something because I really like to get my fingers in my media. This turned out much better than I expected, and I have a scrap left, and I can't wait to use that. I try not to do too much repetition in these 10 cards videos, so I did not create another card with that extra piece that I have, but you can be guaranteed I'm going to. Now that I have all of that foundry wax heated and shimmery and shiny, I'm going to take the plate at the card front that I created earlier. This was one that I had just pulled things out to play with to see how they work, and it turned out perfect. So I decided to be prepared to be shocked here. I am making an A2 size card. This is 4.25 by 5.5 inches. That would be big enough to cover the entire card front. And I'm using the panel that I've already created to create my size for the piece that I'm just created. So now we'll glue this to that embossed and then foundry waxed panel and glue that down. Now this is a little bigger than I want it to be ultimately. I find my card base here, and I decide to trim about 1/8 of an inch from each side. That would make this 4 by 5.25, so that there is a thin mat all the way around our card front. That is a pretty typical way I like to design things. The edge to edge look doesn't look as finished to me. That is a personal preference. Everyone has their own style, and this happens to be mine. We'll glue this directly to our card front, and I have to add some extra things. Just going to make sure that it adheres nicely. And now it's time to add some extra stuff. We're going to add some sentiments from the All About You Wishes stamp and die set. And again, I'm using the stamp wheel to stamp this on. And there are coordinating dies for both of these sentiments. So I'll be using those to quickly die cut those and put those on the inside of my card. I learned my lesson with the previous card that I tried to stamp in. Well, no, I guess I didn't, because I did try to stamp again, and it looks like I'm gluing my sentiments over the top of them again. Well, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, and sometimes you just have to compromise. Next, I pull out the peach opalescent sequins, and we're going to glue those across the front of our card for a little extra shimmer and shine. And these peach opalescent sequins are a wonderful color that's very chameleon-like. It works with any of the warm tones, whether it's red, yellow, orange, gold. They just have that beautiful chameleon effect that they will adapt to whatever of those colors you would like to mix it with. I bet you could even get away with using it with some greens. We're going to take this scrap of that piece that we cut down and add that to the inside of the card. I had already trimmed it down to 4 inches across, and it does fit in here perfectly. I like how that continues the effect of the front to the inside of the card. Card number 4, we're going to take some Distress Oxide inks in Candied Apple, Squeezed Lemonade, and Salvage Patina. And I'm going to start with the yellow, move to the Salvage Patina, and then the Candied Apple. And I spritz that with a little water, and then I come in with some mica spray stains. Cocktail Party, Harvest Moon, and Shiny Bauble, I think is what the third one is. I just wanted a red, a yellow, and a blue or cyan. And I am spritzing those on for some shimmer and shine. I'm really just enjoying playing with my mixed media products. I go through streaks where I feel like I have used them too much and must try working with other things so that my viewers aren't bored. Here I'm using that little silicone mat that I had out earlier to add some water in a little more controlled fashion. Now that I have a little bit of mixture of our colors, I'm coming back with the mica stains and spraying them on the silicone mat and dabbing them onto our paper, just to see if I can't get more of the ink smushed effect without making a big mess over my entire work area. Now that I've heat set that, we're going to run it through the candles for every birthday embossing folder of the month for May. I do spritz it with a little water on each side to help prevent the paper from cracking or breaking. Now that I have embossed that entire panel, we're going to take some distress, what is this called? It's glaze, distress glaze in Lost Shadow, the newest color from Tim Holtz. I'm using my embossing ink to go over the raised area, and I did not push hard. I just slid it across the embossing. Added the Lost Shadow glaze and heat set that, and that just kind of gives each of those colors a little bit of darkness without changing the color. Okay, time to pull out the Glimmer of the Month Silhouette Balloon Greetings again, and we're going to use the Make-A-Wish foiling plate along with the Essential Stylish Ovals. Now I'm making sure that I have enough space around this foiled sentiment before I adhere it down to or tape it down to a piece of cardstock. I foiled it with some, I think it was matte gold or satin gold foil, and die cut that with the oval. And then we're going to take the Infinity Punch and Pierce die, which cuts 3 pieces and coordinates with the stylish ovals. These are just gorgeous. I love all of the detail that it cuts into the cardstock and the fact that they coordinate with the ovals, and we're going to just adhere these different sections together. I am going to add a little bit of extra cardstock behind the sentiment oval before I adhere that to the detailed oval that we just created. I think this really gives our sentiment banner or portion a big bang for its buck, which we need on this really bold background. Okay, time to assemble this beautiful card. I'm going to adhere the card base that was cut down to 4 3/4 by 6 3/4 with a little bit of extra cardstock adhered to the back. I find that helps the card not buckle or bend after it's dried and sat for a little bit. We'll adhere our sentiment right in the middle, and then we're going to use the Best Wishes on Your Birthday foil set. This is from the Glimmer Card Front Sentiments collection. This is coming out on May 10th, and there are several in this line. They are just gorgeous. I love that they are so large, and there are lots of our essential dies that will die cut them if that's what you want to do. If you want to just foil them on a pretty background, that's all you have to do too. Just beautiful. And they fit inside a 5x7 card. I'm going to say it again, just beautiful. We're going to add those peach opalescent sequins again. There are 3 sizes of sequins in this mix, which I love. I like to have at least 3 sizes of sequins or embellishments of any kind. I like that design style. That is card number 4. Card number 5, we're going to use the small die of the month, which has an airplane with these banners. Now you can, what I did was I die cut the sentiment portion first and then used the border, the die cut outline and die cut that. And I cut it with some navy blue cardstock after I found this scrap. Oh, here's the tail. I'm showing you that there is a crease line that shows you where you line it up to adhere the main part of the banner to it. And then there is another section that is the tail on the other end, and it also has an embossed line. The portion that I die cut the sentiment from was something I had done. I think that was some gel press scrap from another project long ago, and I just had this piece laying on my desk. Yes, there's a pile of scraps on my desk, and I rifle through them frequently. There is a die that cuts the string that attaches the banner to the end of the plane, And now you're going to watch me assemble the airplane. Did I do all of it perfectly? Probably not, but I think it still looks pretty good anyway. There are several layering elements that make this multicolored airplane very easily, and you can add some metallic accents, shimmery accents. You could make this all kinds of different colors. You can position that propeller in lots of different ways. I decided to have white and red wheels. I can't imagine them ever actually being white, but it looks good on this airplane. This little fallout piece you can cut from another color. As you can see, I did that whole body of the airplane in a light blue and then used the accent of a navy blue. We're going to use the balloons and banners embossing folder. This is the 3D embossing folder of the month. It's going to get lots of use in this video. I did trim this panel down to 4.5 by 6.5. I'm using this gilding polish, and I am adding some shimmeriness to the raised portions like I did with the embellishment mousse earlier. You could use the lunar paste for this also. Lots of great ways to add shimmer to your raised edges. And again, I must like playing in the mediums with my fingers. We have another 5x7 card base. I'm going to adhere this directly to the card base, and this is one of those instances where I wish I hadn't done that. I do end up putting it under some heavyweight objects a couple days after it was completed because the corners started to pull up. I probably didn't I didn't let things dry enough, or I should have put extra layers behind it. Here we have the Essential Stylish Ovals again. I'm cutting that from some vellum. I wanted something to separate our airplane and the banner from the background. And then after I adhere it directly to the vellum, I decide that I need a little more separation between it and the background. So I grabbed another oval, smaller than the vellum one. Die cut that from some scrap cardstock that had white on at least one side and adhered that centered on the back of the vellum. And then we'll add a little extra cardstock on the back of this. No, we won't. We'll directly adhere this to the card front in the center of the panel. Next, I'm going to take several pieces of clouds. There's 2 cloud dies in this die set, and I cut them several times. I'm adhering some of them together to do little cloud banks and adhering those around our plane and our banner. I had a lot of fun gluing these together in various ways and layering them all over our oval. It was just so interesting to add the clouds over the balloons, and the fact that we have the banners and on the die cutting and in the embossing. This was a really well coordinated group of clubs yet again. Just adding a little extra glue behind the parts of the clouds that aren't over the vellum to help anchor everything in place. A few single clouds help add some balance and keep with that theme of an odd number of embellishments. I could see these clouds being used in all kinds of projects that have nothing to do with this particular die set. There it is, all of those clouds adhered, and now we're going to take the Aura Opalescent sequins, very similar to the Peach Opalescence. There are several sequin colors in that line. Check that out if you'd like. I love the color variety, but I use the peach and the aura the most. Just scattering those across the card front in my usual fashion from the left upper to the right lower, and lots of them. I hope you like that card. I think it could be used for lots of different things. Here I'm showing you using a different sentiment. You lift me up. I think that would be very appropriate with it also. Next, we're going to use the balloon and birthday wishes to create a bunch of flowers. I tend to do this where I cut out flowers in a bunch of different colors and then layer them up and use them on several projects. Here's the different ways I've layered them together, and I've used a iridescent half gem or half pearl to create the centers of each of these flowers. Just adding a little dab of glue. As you can see, I have them all on a piece of packaging here that I use to help form the flowers in a cupped shape. I used the, oh golly, I don't remember what it's called. It's from the Susan Tierney Cockburn series. It helps shape your flowers. I use the ball stylus end to push it down into that packaging. And here we have several of those flowers together. And you can layer them up in so many different ways. These two pieces are each basically the same shape. And I did find that they are really pretty, but there's another version I did using 3 different shapes of flower to create a very full looking multi-petal flower. And I used all kinds of different sizes of these gems to add to the centers of these flowers. And I wouldn't say that any one of them was the exact right size. I mean, you could use lots of them. So we're going to move on to card number 6 now that we've assembled a bunch of flowers. I'm going to die cut the sentiment using just the punch out part. This pushes the paper out. And then you can use the coordinating die to die cut out your banner. Just going to get that put in place, tape it down, and run it through my little sidekick here. I love having a small die cutting machine for these tiny dies or small dies. Just makes it easy so I don't have to go to the other part of my craft room. I'm going to layer this behind with some white to help the words stand out, and we'll use the the sentiment from that same die set and the banner from, so I'm using the large die and the small die. The large die is the one with the larger banner and all of the flowers and those sentiments. The small die has the smaller banner with the die that pushes the sentiment out of the piece of cardstock. I'm going to layer up our layers here to create the tails of our banner, and we're only going to use one of the tails. And I'm going to layer this all together a little uniquely because we're going to use the banners from both of these die sets and combine them to create our sentiment. It's going to snug together much easier than I thought it would. I'm just making sure I have this lined up correctly because for some reason in my head that just wasn't working. But I never fear, I did get it figured out, even though I had just assembled the previous one. I thought maybe that it needed to be assembled differently. Now we're going to use those crease lines on our dies to help us line up our banner pieces. So we'll do the tail above and below our main banner. And I'm just lining that up with the edge of the shadow part of the banner tails. I used some white cardstock and you saw me ink blend part of the shadow or the shadow portion of the tail so that it would be a contrasting color. And it is one of the colors that I used to ink blend the paper that I cut the sentiments from. Now we'll adhere the to and you sentiments to our banner. I love that this is curved to the shape of this banner. Makes it super easy to assemble. Now we have the word to, which is 2 separate die cut elements. It's on the same die, but it cuts the letter T and the letter O separately. And they snug into the banner outline, the sentiment underline, to create that lovely sentiment. Next, we're going to assemble the other portion or the other sentiment banner. I'm adding some glue behind that die cut image, and then we're going to adhere that to the white backer so that the white shows through the happy birthday sentiment. Now we're going to snug these together. Don't you love how that looks? I think that's just amazing. So we will go over and under. So I have to carefully snug this in and adhere that. I put a little glue on top and below the different portions. And now we're going to use the candles for every birthday embossing folder again. And it's going to be another 5x7 card because we know I love them. And you can absolutely adapt these designs to an A2 size card, or actually any card size if you would like, as long as the image will fit on the card base. I have cut this down to actually 4 3/4 by 6 3/4, a little bigger main panel than usual. I did put some scrap cardstock behind that and behind our banner here. We'll adhere that to our embossed part, and I will put a heavyweight block on top of that to help that make sure that the glue sets really well. Here are all of our die cut and assembled flowers and the foliage that goes along with them. I'm going to take some reds, yellows, and oranges and adhere those around our banner. We're going to do some in the upper left and some in the upper right. And I'm just adding a dot of the Barely Art Precision Glue to the back of each of these flowers and adhering those down, making sure to give them a little bit of pressure and a little bit of time to adhere. I am also using my reverse tweezers here to help me place all of these items so that I don't get my big fingers in the way. It just makes it a lot easier to do all of this adhering of small items. I did have to trim off part of the stem on this little tiny leaf so that I could get it to slide under my floral bunch. We'll do another floral bunch here. I am using a variety of flower sizes and shapes in each of these groupings. I think that adds a lot to your design, and I love that there were several sizes and shapes included in this die set. It makes it very easy to create a lovely bouquet of flowers. After this month's kit, I should be stocked up on birthday cards for a little while anyway. And I don't know about you, but my family tends to have bunches of birthdays in short amounts of time, and then you can go for a few weeks without another birthday. We come from very large families, and my husband and I, and so there's always someone that has a birthday or an anniversary. And oddly enough, we're in that gap between kids graduating from high school or having babies. That's okay. We all need a break. So we are excited for the next round. I decided to add some of the flat flowers to the inside of the card to add that design element to the inside. We're going to use the large die of the month again, the balloon and birthday wishes. And this time I've cut out a bunch of balloons. I'm also using the add-on to the Glimmer of the month, and this one is the You Lift Me Up. I've already foiled it with the confetti rainbow, and we're going to pull out this beautiful Head in the Clouds embossing folder. I'm making a mini slimline card. I have the mini slimline A and B precision layering dies. I did use one from the set B, die cut that, and we're going to make, I think this is a 3x6 card. I have some scrap cardstock glued behind these gorgeous clouds. And I have to say that my photography did not capture these clouds very well. They are nice and crisp and beautiful and very similar to the cloud dies in the small die of the month kit. I'm going to take these cute little balloons and adhere them above and below the sentiment, You Lift Me Up. Now for that You Lift Me Up, I used the coordinating dies to die cut as much of the sentiment as I could and then fussy cut out the remainder of that sentiment. Very easy to do, and by being willing to do that fussy cutting, it really expands the uses of these sentiments. I am so excited to play with all of those sentiments. I had to resist the urge to use them on every single card. I do love me a big, bold sentiment. Now I'm going to add some extra cardstock behind that main sentiment and adhere that to our little groupings of balloons on the front of our card. And we're going to take some flowers. We have gobs of these flowers. I may as well use them, right? And I think it's really cute to tuck flowers in amongst balloons and so many other items. So I'm going to use coordinating colors. We've got a couple of blues, a couple of purples, and there are greens in the stems that they're attached to. Again, I had to trim off that stem. Don't be afraid to modify your die cuts to make it fit your design. Got a purple flower here, and we're going to trim that again also. Just getting rid of some of the paper crumbs. Sometimes those accumulate on the edge. I think I really just need to use new plates that can help cut down on all of these paper crumbs or slivers that you get. Now I'm going to pull out one of the tiniest of the flowers in that die set and adhere those next to our little stems of flowers. I'm going to grab one more and put that on the upper bunch of flowers. And that completes the front of this card. Getting the glue off the tips of my reverse tweezers. Oh, and then the inside of the card, I decided to add some of the balloons that were left that I didn't use on the front. The die that cuts out the balloons cuts 3 balloons at once. So there were 3 balloons of each of the colors of balloons that I cut out. That definitely adds fun detail to the inside of the card. There are strings in that die, but I didn't use those. For card number 8, we're going to use the Simon Hurley Everyday Sentiments dies. I've used those before. I love them. We have some leftover cardstock that I put the lunar paste in Slippery When Wet and die cut those sentiments, assembled those, and now we're going to use the balloons and banners embossing folder again. I have a 3.5 by 6.5 inch card base. I've used my gift card holder die from a previous kit from long ago. That one just stays right by my die cutting machine, so I can add it to so I can add it to a card whenever I want to. I have put an old hotel key on the inside to make sure that the tabs don't glue to the front of the card, and I adhered the card front to the card. Now I can take that placeholder out, and we're going to take our sentiment, figure out where we're going to put our flowers, and I have a rainbow of flowers picked out here. They're all the same style, and I'm going to do a large flower and a small flower of each color. I started with the center flower so that I could make sure I spaced everything pretty evenly. Now I am eyeballing this. I am not using any rulers or anything to make sure that I get them exactly even. It keeps with the organic feel of this card. And you can see some of the stems sticking out behind the larger flowers. Don't worry, I'll go back and trim those out off camera. That way they don't add any funky little sticking outness. We'll add our sentiment to the front of this card. Just going to glue those directly to the card base. I did add an extra layer of the shadow element behind those to add a little extra height. Now for card number 9, we're going to use the Glimmer of the Month again. We're going to take the Happy Birthday foil plate, use another of the specialty foils. I'll have that linked in the description box below also. These are like little rings in a gold color, iridescent. We'll tack the dies down to the cardstock, and we're going to fussy cut the remainder of this after I have die cut this sentiment. There we have the piece, and I trimmed off the extra cardstock just to the edges of the die cutting, and just doing some quick fussy cutting around the Y on the end of birthday, cleaning that edge up again a little bit. And you can see that it's not difficult, and it doesn't have to be super precise, just roughly even border around your elements. Now you can just kind of blend it in with the already die cut portions, and it looks fantastic. We're going to take the Distress Mica crayons. I haven't used these before. Again, definitely in the mixed media stage today. And I have a piece of mixed media cardstock here. It's not very heavyweight, but it has a lot of the properties of watercolor paper, and it will handle a lot of working. So I'm scribbling the Distress mica crayons all over this cardstock in a rainbow fashion, as usual. I do love my rainbows. And then I am going to take and do some fun stuff with it. It's super easy. They are water reactive as long as they're still wet. And I have a flat brush here and some water, and I'm just going over each of these colors. I started with the yellow and try to do the warm colors first, and then I go back and do the cool colors and blend that all out. It turns out so fun. I am really finding that I like these crayons. I'm going to have to use them some more. Spattering some water on here because, again, they are water reactive. I do heat set that with my heat tool, and look at that. That didn't take much effort at all. And now this isn't going to wipe off. It will remain water reactive, I believe. I'm not positive. I didn't test that. Now I'm going to use my anti-static powder tool, which is just a sock with some cornstarch in it. And I am using some embossing ink. I do have to ink this up 2 or 3 times because I paused and thought about whether I was going to still try to use this since I dropped my ink pad on the cardstock. Now I did make it work. Shockingly, I was able to remove the extra embossing powder. I'm using the Hero Arts brass embossing powder here. That has a lovely, deep, rich golden color and stands out well on this embossed panel. And you can see where I dropped the ink pad on our cardstock. I did take a dry brush and just remove the extra and heat set it. Now, it does help that this did not have to be perfect. I am using the Clear Stamp and Die of the Month kit today, and I cut those with the coordinating dies. And I did cut some extras so that I could add some extra layers behind it. We embossed another birthday candle panel. We have another 5x7 card base here. I have extra cardstock adhered to the back of our panel, which was cut to 4.5 by 6.5 inches. And we'll adhere that to our card front. This card will actually come together very quickly. I'm going to take our die cut pieces that are rainbow colored and gold heat embossed. I am centering that so that on the 3 sides everything is even, and then I will repeat that for the bottom portion, and that leaves a nice gap for our sentiment that we foiled earlier, die cut and fussy cut. Added a little bit of extra cardstock layers behind the center of this sentiment so that it will lay nicely over our other panel pieces. Here we have the Aura sequins again, the pearl opalescent sequins, and I'm adding those in a scatter across the front of the card. This is a large card, so it can handle a lot of sequins, and as you can see, I've been using these over and over again, and I won't run out anytime soon. I encourage you to check out the sequin selection. They have some really pretty ones. Now, the inside of the card, I wanted to have that rainbow effect continued inside. I found one of my rainbow ink pads from Hero Arts that came in a kit long ago, and I am inking that up and using a stamp platform from my stash that has it's open on 2 sides, so you can put whatever size you need into this. Next, I took one of the sentiments from that same stamp set and stamped it in the center of our rainbow image with some VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. I did do a couple of inkings to get a nice solid image. Now for card number 10, we're going to use the Punch and Pierce sentiments from last month. So I have the sentiment Thank You in this beautiful fine scripty font. We're also going to use a couple more of the Distress mica crayons. I'm starting with this yellow, and then I'm using this yellowy green color. No, I started with the green. It was Holly Branch and Harvest Moon, I think. And then I am going to start with the green and blend out. We're just going to create a backdrop, a watercolory backdrop for our card. Now these Distress Mica crayons have mica in them, so they have a shimmer to them if you haven't caught that. I again spattered that with some water. I trimmed this down. We're going to make a four bar card, which is 3.5 by 5 inches. This panel is 3.25 by 4 3/4. And I did put a little bit of extra cardstock behind that also. Here we have 3 layers of the shadow behind. Thank you. I'm adhering those to the center of the card, right in the middle of that swash of green and yellow. Just going to center that perfectly. Use my heavyweight block to make sure they adhere really well. And then we're going to use a bunch of the flowers from the large Die of the Month kit for this month. Again, I made a ton of these flowers. I cut each die from a different color or from each of the colors, and I chose a rainbow spectrum again. I love to just dig through my scrap bin, my rainbow of the paper scraps, and pull out colors that I feel work well together and die cut a whole bunch of this kind of embellishment. And then what I have left over, I can use whenever I feel like I need some filler on a card or a little extra pizzazz. And it's nice to have that little tray of extra embellishments on your desk ready to go. Do you have to do that? No, and some people would throw away the extras because they feel they would never use them. However, I do find that eventually I do use all of those little bits and bobs on future cards. It's very nice to have some of that work done ahead of time so that when you need to throw something together quickly, it is actually quite doable and still looks beautiful. On the inside of the card, we're going to continue our rainbow of flower theme. And I'm just going to haphazardly lay these flowers across the bottom of the card. And they don't even have to cover the entire bottom of the card. I really am just haphazardly tossing them on with no plan other than to keep it in the Roy G. Biv order. Now this card could absolutely have been a birthday card, but as I may have mentioned earlier, I am going on a trip. We actually leave in just a couple of days. And I apologize for this video not being out on the 1st of the month. I had grand plans and half of this video complete before I ended up having my granddaughter for about 5 days. And that ate up a lot of my crafty time. I will try to have it out on the 1st of the month next month. Here are all of the cards that I created today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give me a comment and let me know what you think. What ones are your favorite? What things you're excited to play with? And what you'd like to see me play with in the future. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, now would be a great time. Make sure you like this video and check that description box below for any of the supplies that I've used today. Until next time, bye-bye.